Hi, this is Elsa P. from ElsaElsa.com, outlining common problems people have when they're failing to find a relationship. This video is going to be about people who have the wrong idea of what's right for them, also known as a closed mind. Most of us have some idea what we're looking for when we think about what we want in a partner. A woman might want a man with a certain level of income or a certain level of education. She might want a man who's 6 feet tall. She might like dark hair. She might want him to eat meat or not eat meat and to agree with her politics or whatever. Here's the news. Chances are, provided that this man can be located, chances are he's not going to be the actual match for her. So that's the news. And if you want to check this, just ask anybody that you know who's happily married or happily partnered, and ask them if the person who was right for them was what they imagined, because almost universally they're going to tell you no. And here's the good news, happy news for anyone who's thinking about debating whether or not they might want to rethink having a list like this. Most people will tell you that their real partner was not what they imagined, and also that their real partner was better than they imagined. So I think that's encouraging. But let me go into some very specific ways that this list thing doesn't work. Okay, first thing is it's very common. People put something on their list and they only look at the thing in the light. They do not look at the shadow of the item. A good example of that is a lot of women say that they want a rich man. Okay, I understand why. Who doesn't want to have resources? I get it. Okay, but if you're going to have something like that on your list, look at the shadow of that as well. Because if you do get a rich man, chances are he's going to come with a significant downside. For one thing, people who have a lot of money tend to work a lot. So this man's going to be focused on making money, which means he's not going to be focused on you or your children. If that doesn't matter to you, that's fine. But you get the idea of what I'm saying. Look at the thing in reality. Also, on the same subject, if you get a man who's really rich, chances are he's going to have a stream of women offering themselves to him. Again, if you want to deal with it, that's fine. But look at the whole picture, because if you look at the shadow along with the light, some of these things are going to come off your list pronto. Okay, so that's one thing. Make sure everything on your list is realistic. Another thing that's that people common do when they have, I should just say, generally speaking, when you're looking for an ideal, people who do that tend to also idealize themselves, which is always a problem. You know, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But that's going back to the specific things that people do that I think are just sort of crazy. Another thing I see is people have stuff in their list that makes no sense at all. As an example of that, a woman who is 5'3" will want a man who is 6 feet tall. I have no idea why. She'd be perfectly happy with a man who's 5'9". She's got some kind of other people's standard, I don't know. But what happens is she goes to a party and she only looks for men who are higher than this height, who are going to hit above that line and meet her criteria. Consequently, she does not see the man who's eye to eye to her who would actually make her happy, and I just think that's foolish. Okay, another thing people do with these lists is they put things on them. They describe someone who doesn't exist. They just simply don't exist. As an example of that, a woman will say she wants a manly man, but she also wants him to cry at chick flicks, and this just doesn't exist. An alpha male is not going to feel what you feel when you hold a baby. Okay, so if you have things like that on your list, you can look into your blue, you're going to fail. You're going to fail to find that person. And we've already established it. I've already mentioned that even if you find that person, he's not going to be what you're looking for anyway. He's not going to be the right man for you anyway. And so on that, to illustrate that, I want to use a story so you can see how this works when it works in real life. Okay, so the story's true. I had a friend, her name was Eve, and that was her real name. Her name was actually Eve, was short for Evening Star, which was her given name, which gives you some insight into who she was and where she came from, what her parents were like, and so forth. Anyway, Eve was a beautiful girl, and she was partnered with the king of the town. Prom king, prom queen. Now, they seemed like some kind of match, except for that Eve was interesting, and she was nice, and her boyfriend was a jerk, and I really hated this guy. And I used to see him, I'd see him looking in the mirror all the time, literally looking in the mirror, and I would just, I would badger her all the time. Why don't you get rid of that guy? I can't stand it. Your boyfriend's a jerk. I used to tell her this all the time. He didn't treat her so well, and they'd break up and, on and off, and I just wished she'd just dump him for good. So I used to, constantly tell her this, what a jackass he was. So, she just listened and she laughed. We were friends. And then one day she told me about this other guy who was coming into her job asking her for a date. And he just was, dogged about it. He just kept coming in and just imploring her to give him a chance and to go on a date with him. And he said, like, the stars above, agreed for them and stuff like this. And I told her, I think he sounds interesting. I think you should go out with him. And she said, but he's short and he has a round head, and I pictured Charlie Brown, it made me laugh, and I said, I don't care, because I don't care if he's short and has a round head. He sounds interesting to me and I think you should go out with him. So I'm compelling, I'm convincing, and I talked her into it. So I said, I told her, just tell him he only has one date and he better not bore you. So this is what she did. So this guy took Eve on a date. He immediately took her out to the middle of the desert where he owned land, and he took his truck and he started playing the radio and he danced with her right out in the middle of the desert. And he told her he would build her a house out there with his hands, and they could have these babies and they'd be happy. And long story short, Eve fell in love with this man that night. She stayed out in the desert, danced with him till the sun came up, at which point she came to get me and told me she was getting married. Okay, so she did marry him. About 2 months later, she had 2 boys, and a dog, and he built her the beautiful house that he built with his hands. And, here's the thing. Her boys looked just like her husband. They were short, and they had round heads. And guess what looked good to Eve, at this point in her life? That prototype became her ideal. So that's how these things really work. And none of that would ever happen. I mean, you're just not going to have a story like that. That's a real love story. And you're not going to have a story like that unless you live in this kind of way. What do you really want? What do you really want? You're going to be happy with somebody when you feel happy with them, regardless of what they look like. If the man makes you feel good, it's not settling when you partner with someone who makes you feel good. Okay, so when you have things like, you want someone 6 feet tall, you got to ask yourself, do you want to stand next to someone tall, or do you want to be happy? Okay, because I think that's a no-brainer. I'm going to come back in the next video, and I want to go into the astrology a little bit. I want to show you things, markers in the chart that will show you if you're prone to doing this, and also if you're dating someone who's prone to doing this, to idolizing themselves and looking for ideals that don't exist in relationship.